Let me ask you something strange. What if the reason you're not wealthy yet has nothing to do with your income? Not your salary, not your job, not the economy, not the stock market, not even luck. What if it came down to something you do or don't do with $5? I know, that sounds almost insulting. $5, the price of a mediocre coffee, less than a movie rental, an amount so small most people wouldn't bother bending down to pick it up off the sidewalk. But here's what nobody tells you. The psychology behind how you treat $5 is the exact same psychology that determines what you do with 5,000 or 50,000 or 500,000. The number changes, the pattern doesn't. And once you understand this, I mean truly understand it at a gut level, the way you think about money will never be the same again. So stay with me, because what I'm about to walk you through isn't just a money tip, it's a complete rewiring of how you see wealth, and it starts with something so small most people overlook it every single day. Here's the story most of us grow up believing. Wealth is a destination. You work hard for years, you earn more money, and at some point, if you're disciplined enough, you arrive at rich, like it's a place on a map. You just need enough time and enough income to get there. So naturally, we wait. We wait for the raise, we wait for the bonus, we wait until we're making enough to start investing, saving, building. We think, once I'm earning more, then I'll start being smart with money. And while we wait, we spend. Not recklessly. Most people aren't buying yachts. They're spending in the perfectly ordinary, completely invisible ways that drain money without ever triggering guilt. The $6 parking because walking an extra block feels annoying. The subscriptions that auto-renew while you sleep. The extra item in the cart because you were close to the free shipping threshold. The round of drinks you put on your card because it felt awkward to say no. None of these feel like decisions. They feel like life. And that's the trap. Because here's what the psychology research actually shows us. It's not the big financial decisions that separate people who build wealth from people who don't. It's the invisible ones, the ones that happen automatically, the ones that never make it to the level of conscious thought. Nobel Prize-winning economist Richard Thaler spent decades studying this. He found that people aren't rational about money, not even close. We are predictably irrational. We make the same mental errors over and over in patterns that are almost universal. One of those patterns, we are almost completely blind to small amounts of money. We treat $5 like it doesn't count, and that blindness, it's costing people fortunes. Let me introduce you to a concept called mental accounting. This is a term from behavioral economics, and it basically means this. Your brain doesn't treat all dollars equally, even if every dollar is mathematically the same. Psychologically, they aren't. Your brain sorts money into different mental buckets, and depending on which bucket a dollar ends up in, you treat it completely differently. Here's a simple example. Imagine you find a $50 bill on the street. Pure luck. Now imagine you worked a double shift and your boss hands you $50 in cash as a bonus. Same amount of money. But research consistently shows you'll spend the found money faster, more carelessly, on things you wouldn't normally buy. Why? Because your brain tagged it as unexpected windfall money, and that bucket has looser rules. Now apply that same logic to small amounts. When you have $5 in your hand, your brain doesn't file it under serious money. It files it under noise, rounding error, not worth the mental effort of deciding, and so you spend it on whatever's in front of you. A snack, a convenience fee, a small upgrade, something you'll forget about by tomorrow. And here's what gets really interesting. It's not just about the $5, it's about the habit of thought that $5 reveals. There's a principle in wealth psychology that goes something like this. The way you treat what you have right now is a preview of how you'll treat what you get in the future. Think about that for a second. Most people believe the opposite. They believe Once I have more, I'll be more careful. Once I'm making six figures, I'll start tracking my spending. Once I have real money, I'll invest it properly. But that's not how the human brain works. Studies on lottery winners, people who went from ordinary incomes to millions overnight, found that the majority ended up broke within 5 years, not because they were stupid, but because their habits of thought around money didn't change. They treated millions the same unconscious way they'd always treated their paycheck, just with more zeros. The amount of money you have is almost irrelevant if the underlying pattern hasn't shifted. So what's the $5 habit? It's this. Start treating $5 like it matters, not obsessively, not anxiously, but consciously. Every time you're about to spend $5, pause for just 2 seconds. Ask yourself one simple question. Is this intentional? Not is this smart? Not will I regret this? Just did I decide this, or did it just happen? That 2-second pause is doing something your brain almost never does with small purchases. It's making the invisible visible. It's pulling an automatic behavior into conscious awareness. And that, right there, is the beginning of how people actually build wealth. Here's the deeper truth that most money content never talks about. Wealth isn't primarily a math problem, it's a pattern recognition problem. The wealthiest people I've studied, not through some exclusive club, but through biographies, interviews, research, they share something unusual. They're not obsessed with being frugal, they're not paranoid about every dollar, but they have an almost eerie clarity about where their money goes and why. Warren Buffett still lives in the same house he bought in 1958, not because he can afford a mansion, he clearly can, but because he made a conscious decision once, and he's never let that decision slip into autopilot. Every choice, even the small ones, has his awareness behind it. That's not deprivation, that's sovereignty. There's a massive difference. Deprivation is not spending $5 because you're afraid. Sovereignty is choosing not to spend it because it doesn't serve what you're building. Now here's the compounding piece, and I want you to really let this land. $5 a day is $1,825 a year. If you invested that at a modest 8% average annual return, which is historically conservative for a diversified index fund, over 30 years, you'd have roughly $220,000 from $5 a day. But that math, while real, almost misses the point, because the person who builds that $220,000 habit didn't just find $5 extra, they became the kind of person who thinks about money differently. And that mental shift, it spills over into the $50 decisions, the $500 decisions, the moments that actually move the needle on their financial life. The $5 habit is a training ground for the mind. Think of it like going to the gym. When you start lifting weights, you're not building muscle for the purpose of lifting that exact weight forever. You're teaching your muscles a pattern, recruitment, tension, adaptation that transfers to everything else your body does. You get stronger at life, not just at the gym. Same with money. Practicing intentionality with $5 trains the neural pathway, and that same pathway fires when the stakes are higher. There's a term in psychology called behavioral generalization. It means that skills and habits learned in one context tend to spread into related contexts. The self-discipline you build saying no to a $5 impulse quietly strengthens your ability to say no to a $500 impulse. The attention you bring to small decisions trains you to bring attention to big ones. The people who are bad with large amounts of money, look at how they handle small amounts. The pattern is almost always already there, just at a smaller scale. And the reverse is true too. The people who build wealth quietly, the ones who don't look rich but turn out to have been millionaires for decades, they usually have some version of this habit, not necessarily with $5 specifically, but with some low-level financial checkpoint that keeps their awareness switched on. So here's what I want you to actually do with this. Not a 47-step system, not a spreadsheet with color-coded categories, just one thing. For the next 30 days, Every time you spend $5 or less, take 2 seconds and ask yourself, did I decide this or did it just happen? That's it. You don't have to change the behavior yet. You don't have to say no to anything. Just notice. What you'll find, and this is almost guaranteed, is that a significant portion of your small spending is happening on autopilot. It's not driven by desire or pleasure or even real convenience. It's driven by habit, friction avoidance, and the fact that it was just easy. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. That's the magic. Stage 2, if you want to go deeper, is to pick one recurring autopilot spend, just one. Maybe it's the convenience fee you pay every week to avoid cooking one night. Maybe it's the streaming service you haven't opened in 3 months. Maybe it's the daily bottle of water you buy when a filter at home would cost you less in a month than you spend in a week. Pick one. Redirect that money, even just that one thing, into a savings account you label with whatever you're actually building toward. A house, a trip, an investment account, financial breathing room. It doesn't matter what, label it with something that means something to you. Here's why the label matters. Research by behavioral economists shows that earmarked money is significantly harder to touch than unnamed money. When you call it emergency fund, your brain treats it differently than a lump of savings sitting in a generic account. The psychological boundary makes it real. You're not just saving money, you're telling your brain a story about who you are and what you're building, and your brain will start to protect that story. Do this for 1 month. Watch what shifts, not just in your bank account, but in how you feel when you make spending decisions. The anxiety goes down, the clarity goes up. You start to feel less like money is happening to you and more like you're happening to money. That feeling, that's the real wealth. The financial account just follows. I want to leave you with this. There's a quote, often misattributed, but the idea is ancient, that says, "How you do anything is how you do everything." In the context of money, I'd put it this way. How you treat the dollars you think don't matter is exactly how you'll treat the ones that do. The $5 habit isn't really about $5. It's about something much harder and much more valuable. Waking up inside your own financial life. Replacing the autopilot with awareness, choosing your life deliberately instead of just reacting to it. Wealth isn't built in the dramatic moments. It's not built when you finally land the big job, or when the market goes up, or when you get the inheritance. Those moments matter, but they're the exception. Wealth is built in the $5 moments, the ones that feel too small to count, the ones that happen 20 times a week, the ones that added up over a decade turn out to be the entire ball game. The rich don't have a different relationship with large amounts of money than you do. They have a different relationship with small amounts. Start there. If you found this video helpful and want to learn more simple strategies about money, investing, and building wealth, make sure to subscribe to the channel. New videos are posted every week to help you understand money in the simplest way possible. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and share it with someone who wants to improve their financial future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.